What is a warlord? Is it a pirate with a fleet, carving empires out of trade routes? A general with no country, fighting under a flag that no longer exists? Or a lord with a castle full of swords and not an oath that holds? History has given us hundreds of them, from Ragnell the Sea King to Pancho Villa in Mexico, Nestor Makhno in Ukraine, Blackbeard the pirate, to Zheng Zulin in Manchuria. Men who ruled without crowns, governed without laws. Men who built kingdoms that vanished the moment that they died. And if you think this is a relic of the past or the stuff of fiction, you haven't been paying attention. Today we are going to dissect the warlord, not as a trope or a villain, but as a recurring feature of how power behaves when no one is strong enough to contain it. And to do that, we'll examine three very different figures. Moff Gideon from Star Wars, a man trying to resurrect a dead empire. Roose Bolton from Game of Thrones, a lord who treats loyalty as a liability and betrayal as strategy. And Khalifa Haftar, head of the Libyan National Army, one of many figures vying for control of the oil-rich North African nation of Libya. Three men, three very different worlds, but one pattern. A warlord is an individual who commands organized violence and power independently of a legitimate state, and converts that power into political authority. That's the core. Not chaos, not anarchy, a sort of parallel sovereignty. No one calls themselves a warlord. They're generals, protectors, restorers, defenders of the nation, architects of peace, guardians of stability. Because power doesn't just rely on guns and armies, it relies on stories, myths, titles, on what you call yourself.
You know, they call me the Lord of War.
It's not Lord of War, it's Warlord.
Thank you, but I prefer it my way.
Warlords do not appear randomly. They appear under very specific conditions. Number one, state collapse or weakness, when institutions fail to enforce authority. Number two, armed networks, soldiers, mercenaries, militias, men who know how to fight and have nowhere to go. Number three, resources worth controlling, oil, trade routes, cities, strategic locations. Put these three together and something fascinating happens. Power detaches from law and attaches itself to individuals. That is the birth of the warlord. Before we dive into our three case studies, remember this. Warlords come in different flavors. The remnant clings to a fallen system. The restorer claims to rebuild order. The opportunist thrives in chaos. Our three figures each represent one of these. The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters. Let's begin with Moff Gideon. At first glance, Moff Gideon doesn't seem like a warlord. He is draped in imperial symbols. The cape falls just so. His posture is perfect. Even his voice is measured, almost academic, surgical. A man of institutions, not improvisation. He performs the state. And that performance is deliberate. Because Gideon understands something that most warlords don't. Symbols outlive structures.
I will act in my own self-interest.
He wears the uniform, he speaks like a bureaucrat, and he invokes the authority of the galactic empire. But the empire is gone, and Gideon knows it. He's not serving the empire, he's inhabiting its corpse. Where others see collapse, Gideon sees opportunity. The broken chain of command, the shattered hierarchies, the scattered fleets. These are not tragedies to him, they're raw material. A chance to build something new, but also something recognizable.
Long live the Empire.
When he says this, it's not simply loyalty to an empire that he followed. It's incantation, a spell cast over fractured systems and disgruntled officers. A spell reminding them that continuity still exists, that the machine still operates. But the truth is much colder. Gideon is the machine now. So what makes Gideon dangerous is not his cruelty or his intelligence. though he has abundance of both of those, as played with chilling restraint from Giancarlo Esposito.
I was acting. Or was I?
It is his clarity. He understands that legitimacy is not granted by a distant capital. It is performed locally, enforced consistently, and accepted gradually.
I will do whatever you ask.
The villagers and citizens don't need to believe in the Empire. They only need to believe that Gideon is inevitable. But Gideon answers to no central authority. He doesn't enforce imperial law. He pretends it still exists. He is driven by imperial nostalgia. He represents a very specific warlord, a man who cannot accept that the world he served is gone. So he rebuilds a fragment of that world under his control. This is crucial. He dresses like an official because he wants power to seem lawful.
I hope you trust me, Anakin.
Of course.
But strip away the uniform, and what do you have? A man with a private army, no country, and no master. A warlord in an imperial costume. Gideon teaches us something important. Warlords do not always reject systems. Sometimes they imitate them to justify themselves. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. Now we move from fiction into something far less comfortable. Khalifa Haftar. If Gideon is theatrical power, Haftar is geopolitical reality. In 2011, the North African nation of Libya was plunged into chaos by a NATO-backed uprising, spiraling into continuous civil war to this day. The death of longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi destroyed any semblance of stability and order. What was left behind was not simply a broken state, but an empty shell.
In 2011, my country was under attack by the global center of imperialist capitalism.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Haftar has capitalized on that, and the country remains divided as ever.
Forces loyal to Warlord Khalifa Haftar have reportedly launched missile strikes to the south of the capital, Tripoli.
Instead, Libya fractured into rival institutions. There's the Government of National Unity in Tripoli, and in Benghazi there's the House of Representatives, which is backed by Khalifa Haftar's so-called Libyan National Army. Each claim legitimacy, neither has monopoly.
Look at Libya now. Killing, civil conflict, tribal war, murder, terrorism, robbing of national wealth.
There's not one, but many armies. Not national, but factional. City-based militias, tribal coalitions, ideological brigades, smuggling networks with heavy weapons, and fragile allegiances. In places like Misrata, Zintan, Benghazi, authority is enforced, negotiated, armed. Foreign states did not restore unity, they invested in fragmentation. Libya became not just a civil war, but a marketplace of power. What looks like chaos from afar is, on the ground at least, a system, just not recognized by maps. In other words, perfect warlord conditions. Haftar commands the Libyan National Army, in name, but definitely not in structure. Tribal alliances, foreign-backed units, control over oil infrastructure. This is not a national army. This is a coalition held together by personal authority. Unlike Moff Gideon, Khalifa Haftar is not nostalgic. There is no reverence in him for the ideology of Muammar Gaddafi, no attempt to resurrect the dream of Pan-African unity or the socialist Libyan Arab Jamahiriya, because Haftar has already lived through that dream and rejected it. His break with Gaddafi was not necessarily philosophical. After all, Haftar was one of the original officers who overthrew King Idris in 1969. No. His break with Gaddafi was personal, strategic. In the 1980s, after the disastrous Chad campaign, Haftar fell out of favor with the regime that he once served, abandoned, sidelined, and ultimately exiled. When the Libyan civil war engulfed decades later, Haftar did not return as a loyal son of Libya, seeking restoration. He returned as something far more dangerous, a man with unfinished business and a revised doctrine. He joined the movement that overthrew Gaddafi, shattering the system that once threw him aside. And in doing so, he participated in the ignition of the chaos that he now claims to want to contain. This is the paradox of Haftar. He is both arsonist and, now, firefighter. He speaks the language of stability, of counter-terrorism, of national restoration. His forces, the self-styled Libyan National Army, present themselves as the embryo of a unified military, the backbone of a future state. But beneath that rhetoric is something far more familiar. This is the classic state-building warlord, where Gideon cloaks himself in the illusion of continuity. Haftar abandons illusion altogether. He does not say the old order lives. He says, in effect, the old order failed, and I will impose a new one. His narrative is simple. Libya needs stability, and I will provide it. And here's where things get interesting. Traditional pirate warlords controlled gold, trade routes, ports. Haftar controls oil fields, export terminals, economic lifelines. The mechanism is identical, only the commodity has changed. Haftar reveals the modern truth. The pirate ship has become the oil terminal. The warlord has not changed, only his tools have. I'm not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I'm afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. And now we come to Roose Bolton, the so-called Warden of the North. If Moff Gideon is the remnant of an imperial order, and Haftar is the restorer of stability, then Roose Bolton is without a doubt the pure opportunist amidst political chaos. The War of the Five Kings did not simply fracture Westeros, it disintegrated it. From the frozen edges of the wall to the deserts of Dorne, the old certainties dissolved. Kings crowned themselves faster than loyalty could even stabilize.
Lord Renly Maragons.
King Renly. There's a king in every corner now.
The Iron Throne, once the gravitational center of power in Westeros, became just another prize in a crowded field of claimants. Any lord with sufficient cunning, sufficient patience, and sufficient ruthlessness could rise. Not by right, but timing.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
Roose Bolton did not create chaos. He recognized when it was around the corner, and most importantly, he understood how to use it. House Bolton had always been feared, but never dominant. Ancient rivals to House Stark. They were known less for honor than for cruelty. The flayed man their sigil, a quiet admission of their methods. But fear alone does not grant power. For centuries, they remained what many dangerous houses become, useful, but contained. The War of the Five Kings changed everything. Robb Stark's many victories during the War of the Five Kings could not compensate for his political missteps. His broken marriage pact, his reliance on honor in a game increasingly defined by betrayal. The North began to bleed, not just in men, but cohesion, and Roose was watching. He did not rush. He did not overextend. He simply waited for the moment that loyalty to the Starks was more dangerous than betrayal. That moment came in the form of an alliance with House Lannister, the rising force in a war that was less about justice and more about who was most adaptable. And so Roose made his calculation. If the Starks are losing, then loyalty to them is a liability, and if House Lannister is winning, then an alliance with them is an investment. The result was the Red Wedding. This wasn't simply a massacre, it was regicide. The killing of the king in the north transferred sovereignty. In a single night, the north lost its king, its army, and its future. And in return, Roose Bolton gained something that his house had never possessed: legitimized dominance. He was named Warden of the North, raised from feared bannerman to regional ruler over a vast territory that was said to rival or exceed the size of the other kingdoms combined.
The North is larger than the other 6 kingdoms combined, and I am the Warden of the North.
And here's the crucial point. Roose Bolton did not rise simply because he was the strongest. He rose because he was the most aligned with reality as it existed, not as others wished it to be. He swears loyalty to House Stark, and then waits for the moment that that loyalty becomes inconvenient.
We are winning!
Because for Roose, oaths are not sacred, they are temporary contracts.
The Lannisters send their regards.
Roose does not believe in honor, loyalty, or ideology, but those are luxuries of stable systems, a system that Roose doesn't live in. And so Roose believes in only one thing: winning. But even that word is misleading. Roose is not driven by glory or conquest or ambition in the theatrical sense. He does not seek to shine, he seeks to endure. A peaceful land, a quiet people, that has always been my rule. It sounds almost gentle, until you understand what it implies. Peace for Roose is not justice. Quiet is not consent. It is control. Control so complete that resistance never forms. His most infamous act, the Red Wedding, is remembered as brutal, unforgivable. But to Roose, it is none of those things. It's efficient. Why risk uncertainty when you can guarantee a certain outcome?
Explain to me why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner.
The war, in practical terms, ends overnight. Roose does not command the largest army. He does not possess overwhelming force. What he does possess is something rarer: strategic patience. He waits. He observes. He allows others to exhaust themselves in righteous struggle, and then he steps in at the moment of maximum leverage. Roose Bolton represents the oldest and probably most enduring form of warlord. The man who thrives not despite of chaos, but because of it. Where Gideon needs the illusion of order, and Haftar seeks to impose it, Roose requires neither. He reveals, quietly, patiently, and with a knife between the ribs, that for men like him, the rules were never real to begin with. Now let's bring them together, not as characters from separate stories, but as expressions of the same underlying logic of power. Moff Gideon, Khalifa Haftar, Roose Bolton, they all inhabit different worlds, one galactic, one feudal, one modern. But the environments that produce them are structurally identical. Each of them emerge at the point where institutions can no longer regulate violence, and where authority becomes something that is actively performed, seized, and negotiated, rather than assumed. At the center of all three is the same foundation: personal control of organized violence, no chain of command that leads somewhere higher. Their forces are not loyal to a constitution, nor to an idea, not even to a nation. They are loyal to a person, the Warlord. This is the first rupture, the moment where power detaches from something impersonal and becomes something embodied. Gideon cloaks himself in the symbols of a dead empire, performing continuity where none exists. Haftar speaks the language of stability, placing himself as the necessary architect of order. Roose Bolton dispenses with the illusion entirely, treating legitimacy as an afterthought. Yet, despite their differences, none of them depend on legitimacy to act. Legitimacy is in their hands. It's not a prerequisite for power. It is a tool for stabilizing it after the fact. This places the warlord in a space that is not fully understood. Not inside the state, but not fully outside of it either. They exist in what might be called the gray zone between systems, the parallel sovereignty. The space where the old order has not yet fully disintegrated, but the new order has not yet fully consolidated either. It is here, in this ambitious terrain, that power becomes most fluid. So, what is a warlord? Not merely a villain, though he may be one. Not simply a pirate, though he may resemble one. Not even necessarily a tyrant, though he may become one. A warlord is something more fundamental. The re-emergence of political power in its most unmediated form. The fall of an empire, the fragmentation of a state, the collapse of a kingdom. These are not mere crises. They are distributions of power. Power does not vanish. It disperses, descends, and reconstitutes itself into new forms, often faster than any observers can recognize.
Never go to war. Especially with yourself.
Hello. If you're still here, it means something about this spoke to you, enough to stay and listen all the way through, and I won't pretend that's nothing. This video, it's a new step for me, not just in what I'm making, but in how I approach world building, how I write, how I shape characters into something that feels real, cutting away anything that doesn't serve the story. This is closer to the voice I've been working toward as a writer, and from here on out, that's the standard. So if you're curious about where this goes next, stick around. I'm going to keep exploring myth, power, empire, all of it. And if you want to see where this thinking leads in its purest form, you will. So if that's something you want to see more of, stay with me. We're building something here.